Hello, welcome, and thank you for watching this special roundtable from Foodservice Consultant Society International, FCSI, where we will be debating the advantages, but also the challenges and limitations of ventless solutions in food service spaces. I'm Michael Jones from Progressive Content and Editorial Director of FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. This event is kindly supported by Halton and will address the opportunities that ventless, also known as ductless ventilation systems, can present to operators, the implications of installing ductless ventilation on existing building infrastructure, and what the future looks like for the technology. I'm delighted to be joined by 6 of the world's foremost design consultants, plus the Director of Global R&D for Halton, an outstanding group to discuss a subject that is very topical and very pertinent currently. So let me ask each of the participants to please introduce themselves and to tell us a little bit about who they work for. Laura, can we start with you, please?
Sure. I'm Laura Lentz. I'm with a firm called Culinary Advisors. We're on the Eastern Coast in Maryland in the U.S., and we are a design consultancy practicing in pretty much all market segments. Our biggest focuses are healthcare, workplace, and government.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Laura. And can we go to Mildred, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mildred Famero, Principal Consultant in Eminent Foodservice Consultancy, Singapore. Currently, I'm in Philippines and will be based here. And my company is supporting the client for their expectation for smooth functional operations.
Excellent. Thank you, Mildred. And Andrew?
Yes, good afternoon, good evening. It's Andrew Brain here from Melbourne, Australia. I'm co-director of Foodservice Consultants Australia and MTD Foodservice. We primarily work in the field of design and documentation of everything from correctional facilities, hospitals, hotels, and restaurants.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andrew. And Bob?
Hi, Bob Doland. I'm a principal at Jacobs Doland Beer. We are based in New York City. Practice is pretty broad, hospitality, restaurants, food halls. My particular area of expertise is in the B&I field, corporate food service, on-site dining.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. And Ed Arons?
Hello, everyone. Mike, thanks for inviting me to be a guest on the panel. I'm Ed Arons, partner and managing principal with Colburn Guyette. We're a design firm located in the Northeast region of the U.S., and we have experience in many market segments with a large percentage focused on B&I and higher education projects.
Excellent. Many thanks, Ed. And Ed Bircham?
Hello there, Ed Bircham, Director with Humble Arnold Associates based in London in the UK. Our focus in terms of market sector is primarily hotel, restaurant sector, which takes us all over the world. Very much international practice, but also business and industry sector, high street restaurants and higher education are big focuses for us.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ed. And finally, Andrey, please.
Oh, my name is Andrey Livchak. I'm Director of Global R&D for Halton Foodservice Division. I'm joining you currently from the US. Halton is a global manufacturer focusing on demanding indoor environments. We operate in over 35 countries, have manufacturing facilities in 9 countries, and R&D facilities also in 9 countries.
Thank you very much. And Andrey, let's stay with you. To kick things off, I think it might be useful if you could first give us a quick overview on exactly what ventless, ductless ventilation solutions are, and maybe the types of relevant food service projects that the technology is best suited to.
Well, conventional kitchen ventilation is when you use cooking equipment and hoods are ducted. So all the cooking emissions and heat is exhausted to the atmosphere. In ductless, or also called recirculated solutions, these emissions are filtered and released back to space. So it's important actually that in recirculated solution that heat and potentially moisture is released back to space, so there have to be adequate ventilation for the spaces where recirculation systems are installed. Different countries have different regulations, and recirculated systems are regulated in most of the countries. Typically, recirculated systems or ductless systems are limited to electric appliances only. And as far as the applications, I can see that where ductless systems are used primarily in existing buildings when kitchen is open in space not originally designed for kitchen, temporary cooking stations, and also dedicated ventless solutions for specific appliances.
Thank you very much. Laura, we've seen some major ground being made in ventless cooking systems in recent years. What about ventless and ductless ventilation systems? How much are these on your radar as a design consultant? Are you currently specifying a technology, and if so, why?
Yes, they're definitely on the radar. I think it's been a product that the market and the breadth of products that are out there has really grown in recent years. I think it's always kind of had huge need and solve for, high-rise buildings and certain locations, historic, et cetera. Government, we run into a lot of historical requirements in government work. I think that it's also a product, and ventless just sort of in general as a market is a product that you do want to use in the right situation. You want to be careful about when you use it. But I also think that it can solve a lot of problems. It can provide some great solutions for folks who have existing conditions and constraints, whatever they might be. Sorry, to answer the second part of your question there, Michael. We are currently specifying them. We definitely don't put them on every project, being in the Maryland East Coast area, and most of our work is focused here. We will tend to lean much more significantly to ducted solutions and sort of traditional exhaustids. But for pop-up food stations and lots of other things, we're seeing them a lot in projects.
Excellent. Thank you, Laura. Bob, Laura mentioned there about the technology and its ability to solve problems. When you are designing a kitchen ventilation system for a client, there may be restrictions at facilities where it's not cost effective to run ductwork to the building's exterior. In the absence of a practical means of ducting the kitchen's exhaust, are you seeing ventless as a solution and a viable alternative?
Absolutely. As Laura mentioned, I'll reiterate that it's important to point out that where traditional venting is allowed, it should definitely still be the first choice for a lot of reasons. There are some restrictions using ventless, but when used properly, it's my opinion that ventless and the cooking that's underneath the ventless really provides a large percentage of the capabilities of traditional cooking equipment and processes. We are seeing kitchen facilities and ducting becoming more and more scarce. So these, we feel, are good alternatives in the right application. When used right, they do provide for high quality, high volume food offerings where traditionally that was just not possible.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bob. Ed, Arons, from your perspective, Bob there was just talking about ventless being a sort of high quality alternative. How much of a genuine sort of game changer is this technology for the industry, do you think? What sort of point of difference is it bringing?
Well, I think to start, if you think about it, this technology has taken somewhat of a slow road in developing, and therefore, its impact may be deceiving. I believe it started in the 90s. But in the last several years, it's had a significant rise in its popularity. This is most likely based on the advancement in technology, the increased effectiveness of the filter systems, and the amount of ventless equipment that is now available. As a game changer, I think its game-changing ability continues to grow. And the evolution of healthier menus, the push for more electric kitchens, and the lower air volumes lead themselves to more ventless applications. Today, the focus on ventless technology, it seems to continue to increase. The demand for more flexible and sustainable options are desired, and I think that's what's driving it today. So I think the real game changers are yet to come in the industry, and kind of excited to see where technology in general is bringing this industry.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ed. Mildred, does that experience echo for you on the projects you work on too? Is it opening up any new markets with the ability to be that flexible?
Oh, yes, it does. Mostly in hotel, live cooking with a double ceiling, something like this. And of course, in corporate project that the building is already structured and catered for office spaces. There's a limitations.
Andrew, do you believe this technology can revolutionize food service, and how big is its potential for the type of projects that you're working on?
Well, revolutions are slow to build and grow in this type of market. This is a product and a style that we've constantly used in the past in convention centre style operations, where the actual service point may be temporary. As we heard earlier from Laura, the actual point of service for the guests is potentially a pop-up, or it might be in an area that is not usually used as a cooking space. It can also provide a bit more show and flair when it comes to the guest and the guest's experience. There is a revolution, but I think for us, the hardest thing in Australia and Asia Pacific is the lack of client awareness. I think it's probably needs to, we push it where it is applicable, and then find that mechanical engineers don't understand it. And also potentially when you start to talk about it to clients, it's until they see it that they then start to understand.
Thank you very much. Ed, Bircham, Andrey there talked about client awareness. What are some of the big concerns or myths that you guys are encountering when it comes to ventless solutions? And do you feel that any of them are still valid?
I think in terms of those myths and concerns, I think concerns are about the types of cuisine that can be accommodated. It's very focused on electric. Obviously, at the moment, can't use for gas and solid fuel. So that means that some clients feel that is excluding their operation. But actually, given that we're seeing more and more of a move towards electrically biased equipment anyway, we're finding that a lot of those early objections are being overcome by looking at that separately. You start to look at the ductwork, you start to look at the fans and all the associated builders work involved. When we've done exercises, actually it's more competitive in that sense.
Great answer. Thank you very much, Ed. Bob, are there particular sectors or types of clients where this technology is less suitable or perhaps prohibitive?
I haven't seen too much in terms of the market segment that we work in. We find application for this technology in almost every segment, whether it's a fixed, retherm pantry that's always going to be there, to, as it was mentioned, a temporary space that needs to be activated and deactivated. Those are great applications. But in terms of the types of clients, I think it's pretty broad. Some clients do see, talking about prohibitive, there is a perception that there's a high initial capital cost, but as Ed said, when you factor in the cost of rated, duct shafts and welded black iron, sometimes our clients don't necessarily pay for those. So when that's excluded, there could be a high initial capital cost, but also it's important to point out that this technology does require ongoing maintenance and operational costs that may be higher than traditional.
Great answer. Thank you, Bob. Andrey, how can, it's been mentioned already, one of our panelists talked about pop-up, possibilities of catering to pop-up operations. How can ductless ventilation solutions offer operators additional new opportunities to create more revenue in perhaps non-traditional or dead spaces? Have you got any examples of those at all?
Yeah, exactly addressing these needs. Actually, a couple of years ago, we developed MobiChef. It's kind of a ventless solution that allows demonstration cooking and set up a quick cooking station. We use it extensively. Actually, we use it in all our exhibitions, and we'll be using it at the coming NAFEM show as well. So we'll be doing live cooking with demonstration cooking. One example, actually, in Australia, we had one of our customers actually acquired cooking station integrated with the MobiChef, and they used it at sporting venues, actually, large sporting venues. And yes, initial investment is pretty significant, but they managed to cover their initial investments within 2 events, because it actually really generates a lot of revenues when it's properly used.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrey. Laura, Andrey was talking there about return on investment. In your experience, can ventless equipment boost an operator's profits and offer a greater return on investment, or is it more for you about simply being able to maximize space better?
I think it's both. I mean, I definitely think the return on investment is important consideration, especially, as we're working with clients, and one of the big trends that's out there in food service is how quickly concepts want to be able to change and develop. And so as that happens, a mobile or ventless solution can be great for just giving them that flexibility. If there is going to be a great cost in installing a full system, or better yet, if you're going into a project where the food service is coming into an existing space and so there's constraints, I think it can be a great solution, especially if you're looking at a couple years at the most to have a concept and you might want to change it. We work with a lot of clients who are sorting through what they might want to do, what is the right solution for me, and so ventless can provide a good solution that's sort of not going all the way, not biting off the full Monty, but can be a let's try this. And in particular, as kind of Bob said, where you're not necessarily running it, like a grill station that's your workhorse that's every single day, but it's a pop-up food or a special or somewhere where you want some flexibility. I think it can be a really great solution. So I do think it's both. Return on investment and actual, design parameters. But I think the return on investment is a huge consideration for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laura. Mildred, in your experience, how can ductless ventilation solutions add to production throughput in existing kitchens?
Yeah, I can say there will be no more limitations of having a live cooking. You can place live cooking anywhere, whether that is a limitation in a ceiling or in flooring, because this is sometimes the structures talks and an issue for us to having a ducting on top of it.
Great, thank you, Mildred. Ed, Arons, how efficient in your experience is ductless ventilation? What efficiency gains do you think ductless offers?
Well, I thought about that, and I may be mistaken, but I don't think of efficiency when I think of true ductless ventilation systems. They're not the most efficient for grease extraction out of a room or a building. They don't help achieve maximum productivity in an operation. But what they do offer is a viable option when, as many have said already, when traditional exhaust cannot be accommodated. In some cases, maybe traditional exhaust is really not needed. And I think as Bob and Laura said, there's a lot of times it's a pop-up. You don't want to commit to, full exhaust. So it makes a lot of sense, and you're not, really needing traditional exhaust. Having the ability to install without ductwork through a building, it being portable, really. I mean, for every system that's out there, you pretty easily can remove it and bring it somewhere else. I think that's, something that's a pretty big factor in using ventless. Meaning that you can move it to another location. Even the larger systems, you can create a food venue where you didn't, currently had non-used space. To me, that's still the strong point of ductless ventilation. And, I guess maybe for those reasons, you could say it's efficient.
Great, thank you, Ed. Andrew, in your experience, can a ventless solution actually contribute to a reduction in energy consumption?
Yeah, I think it can. We're finding these days that electric equipment is far more efficient than gas. And the second efficiency I think that you'll find is you're not extracting air that has been chilled or heated within a room. Traditional fully ducted systems obviously need to have makeup air, and in most cases they're tempered. So you're heating and cooling air. And while that's balanced, it is potentially going to be extracted from the room. So in a ventless system or a ductless system, you don't necessarily extract the heat or the chilled air from the room. So I think there's those two efficiencies that are built into a ductless system.
Great answer. Thank you, Andrew. Bob, can ventless help meet the challenge of a lack of skilled labour for the food service sector? We're hearing a lot about the labour crisis that's impacting the industry. Can ventless help?
Well, I think ventless, when it's paired with smart cooking technology, can certainly help. So and most of the smart cooking technology, at least that I've seen over the years, has truly been electric equipment. That's where most of the technology really starts. I know that some gas equipment is available as a smart means of interface, but really it's the electric driving that. And I think that as a trend, electric cooking, most chefs that I work with probably disagree with me. I feel that the trend is moving towards all electric kitchens eventually. So I think it's going in the right direction. And I think the technology that's available within the cooking equipment can certainly reduce skilled labor, at least at the point of service, using menu-driven automation, commissary-style distribution methods. All these are possible with these small pop-up retherm style, call them kitchens.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. And Ed Bircham, when you're designing, when you're specifying equipment, do you consider if ventless solutions can be used in a building fire strategy at all?
If I'm honest, it's not something that's led our thinking in terms of specifying ventless systems. But actually, yes, it can, is the answer. Because where you have a compartmented space, and I'm thinking specifically where you might have a tenanted area, you've got to work within a tenanted area and work within that fire compartment where you're not needing to penetrate into landlord spaces or other spaces and have fire-rated ductwork elsewhere, then absolutely it can. It can create a very dedicated independent zone within a tenanted area. So it can be, and probably something for us to think about in the future.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ed. Mildred, could ventless solutions make it easier for operators to cut food waste at all? Is that something that's a positive byproduct at all of ventless?
Not necessarily a food waste, but also cutting costs for service maintenance. On top, I agree with Ed. By having fire compartmented spaces, but on top of it, you don't have ducting that you need to clean. That is, you need the cutting cost for it, the service maintenance for the ducting to clean it, because it's a fire hazard, building up some oil on inside of it. So the service maintenance is a plus that the operator can cut the cost.
Great, thank you, Mildred. Andrey, from your experience, how open is the industry? How open are operators to this new technology? Are you seeing an appetite for increased ductless systems in the kitchen? How is the industry reacting generally?
I think ductless solution will still remain like niche market. I would agree with the rest of the panel that typically it would be more expensive to operate ductless solution than ducted. And speaking of a niche market, I could use another example actually of a partner company we have, Recoir in UK. Actually, they found we were talking about fire safety and had great applications where they developed compact pollution control unit basically that can be attached to different hoods and convert them into ductless solution. And the driver for this application, especially in Heathrow Airport, was to eliminate any grease ductwork because the fires may happen and grease accumulation. But again, I need to emphasize that you need to properly maintain ductless systems, so because it contains filters and it wouldn't function if it's not properly maintained.
Great. Thank you, Andrey. Laura, are your operator clients that you work with generally aware of the ventless system options that are available to them currently? And when they are, do they respond positively?
I think most clients that I work with probably have seen ductless solutions. I'm not always sure that I feel like they actually understand them. I mean, honestly, they're kind of a more complicated piece of equipment in terms of they're not like necessarily arranged. Just to use an example, you turn it on, you turn it off, you cook, you don't cook. Ductless solutions, to the points that we've kind of talked about a little bit with fire suppression systems and whether or not they're included as a part of it, the fact that there are filters that need to be maintained. So in my experience, clients do have seen them. They might have heard about them. They might be somewhat familiar with them. But in terms of really understanding the product, sometimes I think that's definitely an educational piece that consultants need to help assist and fulfill and really, obviously with the goal of just making sure that it's the right thing for a client, because I think the worst thing you can do is provide or specify a ventless system. The client doesn't understand how to use it. The filter is, gobs old and starting to smell and stink, and it can be a bit of a bear. In answer to your question, most consultants or most owners and operators and clients do understand a little bit about them, but I don't think that they understand the full depth of the pieces of equipment and the product lines that are out there.
A lot of education to still be done. Ed Bircham, have you seen examples of previously non-food service facilities owners looking at ductless ventilation systems as an option to adapt existing retail or office environments into hospitality spaces? Were they seeing an opportunity to add a food service element?
I think we're starting to see that. I think what we've seen more is it working the other way. We've seen operators looking at spaces that were previously not going to work for them, trying to get into retail areas. And I think it's a really pivotal time for everyone at the moment for all the reasons we're aware of. That it's a very tough market for landlords, and I think they will be looking for every opportunity to try and open up the breadth of clients that would want to take those spaces. I think it's not just spaces that have got no opportunity for vent, if I'm honest. We've certainly employed the systems in similar restaurants, but it's also, we've used it where there is inadequate ventilation capability. So where you've got duct risers that are not really going to meet the needs of latest guidelines in terms of extract flow, and I'm sure we've all come across that day to day. It creates an opportunity for us to provide the operators full requirement in terms of firepower, within that facility, rather than just being bound by the original ductwork fire riser allowance.
Great answer. Thank you, Ed. Andrew, Ed referred there to kind of the opening up aspect. Currently, some country codes do not allow ventless solutions. How do you feel the industry can influence these regulations? What needs to change for that to happen?
Yeah, I think as professionals in our own right, I think it's our responsibility to educate ourselves in Andrey's products and the various options out there. Codes and limitations are only out there to try and force those to do the right thing or to make best practice. So if we're up against mechanical engineers or local authorities who are questioning the suggestions or options that we put forward in lieu of the situation where there may not necessarily be adequate space for ductwork, I think it's our responsibility. Like, if we are the experts in the room, we educate ourselves, we've become prepared and armed with the information. And then, provided we've got the technical data, so from Halton and the manufacturer, we end up with proof that the quality of air being discharged, temperature and smoke, smell, and all of those are actually being treated. And I think while Asia Pacific, Australia, New Zealand and our region, there is a fairly strict code for mechanical ventilation of food premises. But in all cases, there is the option to go down the engineered solution. It's not necessarily understood by all, but provided there's certification that comes with it from the manufacturers that then takes the responsibility and appropriate code compliance, then I think there is solutions there. It's not an easy task to get over the line, but I think with the correct education on our behalf, we can then provide that as a solution to our clients and to the project team as a whole.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrey. Andrey, we talked a little bit already about the return on investment available to operators, but how much in terms of cost savings can a ductless ventilation typically offer an operator? Why is it worth the investment?
Well, I'm not sure that the cost savings are driving applications for ductless solutions. So I'm pretty sure that it's driven primarily by revenue and ability to cook in a place where you couldn't actually open a kitchen before or open a temporary cooking station. Basically, when we design a commercial ventilation system, we looked at all aspects, the space requirements, we look at cook line, emissions, and we select a ventilation system that is appropriate for this particular application. So if a restaurant can be designed with vented system, we would typically design vented system. And again, recirculated or ductless system is designed for kind of difficult spaces or spaces where you couldn't cook before. Addressing Andrew's concern, actually, when we talk about mechanical engineers, when they're concerned with ductless solutions, what we will be doing is actually their main concern is associated with indoor air quality. And what we'll be doing is actually rolling out the indoor air quality sensor that can address these concerns. We can really physically measure indoor air quality in the space and see whether the filtration or ventilation system is adequate to adopt ductless solution.
Can I just make a comment in hindsight? We didn't actually cover off on the connectivity and technology of the monitoring system. Andrey really just mentioned the sensor and sensing the quality of the air that would be being dispensed from the system. But I think if I'm wrong, there's an app where you can then be told that the various carbon filters and the various filters that you go through might need changing and that they're getting to their lifespan.
Yeah, there is. I think it'll actually shut the system down, I think, if it gets too far along in that process.
But rather than waiting for a user to find that there's an error or that a filter is, there's actually the app that can you can be connected to the system to be told as a kitchen manager, as a facilities manager, building management system, to be told that that unit needs to be addressed.
Yeah, great point, Andrew. Yes, I mean, we monitor actually the pressure drop over conventional filters and actually having the odor sensor to monitor the life of carbon filter, and we can predict actually when it needs to be replaced.
I think that's a great feature, especially today where you can easily connect with a smartphone to a dishwasher, a combi steamer, or in this case, a filtration system.
Question for you, Ed. Arons, there are several options in the marketplace available now for operators. What characteristic do you look for when you're looking to specify the right ventless solution?
You're correct, Mike. There are a lot of options today where there weren't, years ago. I think because of that, as consultants, we have to spend more time thinking about what's required when considering a ventless option now. So, obviously starting with is ventless required or the best solution? So if the answer to that is yes, then what is the menu? What equipment is required? Can you handle this with ventless equipment? Will you need a ventless exhaust system? How robust does that system need to be? So those are some of the questions that I think that kind of get you started in, trying to zero in on what is the best option when you're thinking about ventless. You can start with a countertop ventless exhaust system to cover your panini press, all the way, to an 8-foot full exhaust hood ventilator. That's a ventless option, with fire suppression built in, air scrubbers built in, right? So even if I'm not mistaken, our sponsor has a system where you can have an exhaust hood and have the actual filter system in a remotely located in another room. So if you don't have the height, or you want to kind of give it at least more of a traditional look, you're able to do that. I mean, there's really a lot more options than there were years ago, and I think now it seems that obviously based on the past year that there is a more thought and a push starting for total, building ventilation and air quality.
So lots of things to consider there. Thank you very much, Ed. A final question then, which I'm hoping you can all answer if possible, or give us your opinion on. Ultimately, where will ventless, ductless technology take us, and how do you think the technology and the appetite for it will evolve in the future? Mildred, could I ask you first, please?
With this kind of technology, if having correct information and country certifications that's required for each of the country, it can help solving the limitation over the space and fumes for food service facility. Then this technology also and each functionality can be able to execute without a doubt for every limitation of ceiling or space.
Great, thank you, Mildred. Andrew, same question to you too, please.
Yeah, sure. I think when we're faced with the limitations of fixed parameters around the walls and ceilings of any proposed space, whether it be in a basement of a building or even, say, on a ship, where you're limited to where you can run your ductwork. So I think once you're aware of what the opportunities or the solutions are, there are quite a few applications that I think are, in most cases, the only viable answer. But as we've said in the past, that if you can't do a traditional ducted system, sometimes this is the only solution left.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. And same question to you too, please, Bob.
Sure. I think as menus and the types of foods that we produce become less and less based on animal fats and the fats, oils, and grease present in that menu, that's really the thing that literally gums up the works in most systems, especially ventless, because those typically need to be thrown away when they're full or replaced. I think those barriers that are currently in place with ventless should be lessened. I think once that happens, they'll be able to be deployed in more locations and perhaps with greater frequency. And I do think that cooking and rethermalizing in particular at the point of service gain popularity just because it requires less space in the workplace. And it would ultimately allow for space reduction of the traditional on-site kitchen.
Great answer. Thank you, Bob. Same question to you too, please. Ed Arons.
No, I have to concur with the previous comments. I mean, I think that the real driver is going to be flexibility, which, these systems offer, because that's a real driver, I believe, in probably all of our projects right now. It has been for a while. Changes in menu, as Bob said, are going to, really change the face of the ventless cooking options because, you don't need that heavy grease-laden equipment. And so the more that we go in that direction, the more options we have available for this equipment. And then, as technology progresses and, we see new pieces and new filtration systems, because we know that, the filtration systems, even with the 4-stage filters now, they're a lot better than they used to be, but they still have their limitations. So I think as the manufacturers improve on them, people get more comfortable with them, because that was always the rub with them years ago, that there's going to be a more of a comfort level. And then getting back to municipalities, really embracing this technology, that I do think it's going to, grow as we move forward here.
Excellent stuff. Thank you, Ed. And same question to you, Ed Bircham, please.
Yeah, I think just to echo the comments again of the previous members of the panel, I think, as we said earlier as well, I just think it's going to open up opportunities for new locations, for caterers to be more agile as well, to be able to take that equipment with them rather than having to have that heavy investment into an individual outlet, that they can move from location to location. I think the one thing we're going to see is the technology continue to improve in terms of air quality and control systems around that air quality. And as that improves, I think other localities, other authorities that aren't comfortable with it at the moment, I think they will become more relaxed. I think it will become accepted globally in due course. Excellent.
Thank you very much, Ed. And Laura, your final thoughts too, please.
Well, I have to say Bob's comment about plant-based foods and how cuisines are changing, I think that's a huge point. My mind was going to just the ability to change up equipment in terms of thinking about different cuisine styles and ethnic foods and all that, but even the meat to plant-based is a really good point. I think as pop-up food stations and flexibility has been mentioned already, I think that's huge. For me, the biggest point is this whole past year has really taken our world and turned it on its head. And so I think any solution that offers flexibility can solve for, really what is uncertainty. We have some campuses in the workplace that are completely decentralizing. They don't know whether it's for a while or whether it's forever. And I think some of that is sort of a short-term solution, but I think ventless offers some huge opportunity there. And so I think looking to those equipment solutions is going to solve for that. And as we found with technology, once you do that, once you start to use it, it finds places where it's useful, even more than it is already. And so I think it's going to see growth, and I think it's going to stick around because of that.
Excellent. Thank you, Laura. And final thoughts from you too, please, Andrey. Where do you see this technology evolving?
Well, first of all, I want to say that we shouldn't view ventless solutions as like a hood and filter combination as one unit. Ed had a great example, actually. It could be the filtration station can be broken in modules, installed remotely to accommodate space requirements, and turn basically vented solution into ventless solution with properly designed ventilation system. As far as sustainability, I think that truly the effort needs to be working with, try to eliminate or minimize emissions at the source. And that's what we're doing, is actually working with cooking equipment manufacturers to turn the cooking process itself into ventless solutions. So, for example, we work with combi oven manufacturers, with convection oven manufacturers. We bring equipment in our lab, measure emissions, heat gain from space, and work with these manufacturers to make cooking process more efficient and basically easy to use, and turn cooking equipment itself into ventless solution. I think that's the true sustainable approach in this direction.
Excellent. Very positive, and an excellent point to close on there. It's been a great discussion from a first-rate panel. So Laura, Mildred, Andrew, Ed, Robert, Ed and Andrey, my thanks to you all for joining us today. I also like to thank Halton for their support. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to fcsi.org for future events. Thank you.